Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hometown Hauntings. I am your host, Stephanie, and today I am joined by two of our amazing guides. One is from Charleston, and the other is from Galveston. So, first up, let's welcome Lance to the podcast. And, Lance, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you become a guide with us.
I am Lance down here in Charleston, South Carolina. And the long and the short of it is I'm a shameless attention whore. That's how I found my way into this position. I had spent 15 years in corporate America doing employee training and development. So a ton of public speaking experience. Secured a retirement package from the company that I was working for, stayed gainfully unemployed for about a month and then ran off to become a tour guide in Charleston, and that was 10 years ago.
Oh my
And
God.
I haven't looked back. And with Ghost City, I was their second employee that they hired in Charleston when they first opened. And honestly, I love my job 9.5 days out of 10.
Awesome. I actually don't even know what you really look like because you always have other pictures on your profile. um, so it was actually nice. I just realized I was talking. I'm like, I don't think I've ever actually seen your real face.
Well, one does want to cultivate a sense of mystique and aura. You have to have some level of build up. You don't just want to jump right into
Right.
everything
Yeah.
immediately.
And a little bit of humor in there too.
A lot of it. That's the only way I can make it through my day is cynicism and humor. That's how I survive my daily world.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're here today. And then welcome Bernice from Galveston. If you could just tell us how you became a guide with us and what makes you kind of love what you do.
My name's Bernice, but I go by Bern. I'm from Galveston. I'm what people here call BOI, born on the island. And so have grown up with Galveston just in my blood. And everybody here is very into Galveston history. And so I you start learning in sixth grade. And so the opportunity to share it with a bunch of people who are just coming in from all over the world to visit Galveston has just been super fun. And Galveston is considered one of the most haunted cities in the country. And so those spirits have just been kind of part of our lives here. And so it's really been nice to take that and share it with people.
Yeah, before starting this job, I actually thought Galveston was just a spring break destination. And then come to find out there's a lot more going on there than spring break in March and April. So it was a pretty fun thing to learn the history, and just like we always joke that New Orleans, where our headquarters is, that there's people here that nobody loves New Orleans like New Orleans. It's kind of like nobody loves Kanye more than Kanye. But then we are joking that there's got to be a state that's like that. And someone's like Texas. And we're like, yes, nobody loves Texas more than Texas. But the history of Texas is so incredible. And I think it gets overlooked by just the pure size of it. I don't think people realize the depth of it as well.
Yes, we're not short on self-regard here. And but yeah, as far as the opportunities for haunting, Galveston County is home to the country's largest, deadliest natural disaster in American history and the largest industrial accident, both of which just decimated their communities. Yeah, the 1900 storm, 8,000 people in a day. And so if that's not gonna leave some spirits around, where would,
Yeah.
So.
What's interesting with both of our cities is Charleston is also on the water and definitely gets its fair share of hurricanes and tropical storms. And I'm sure there's crazy stories that come out of, I know there are, being in New Orleans.
It's a running joke in any of my tours, historical and ghost, that the British were nice enough to build this city in the middle of a swamp. And so that leads to all sorts of issues. So 350 some odd years of Charleston history, you've got hurricanes and floods, earthquakes, three citywide fires, two enemy occupations by two different enemy armies over its course. So I jokingly tell people that this city's been hit by everything but a volcano and an asteroid. And
Those are not off the table.
but no, exactly. So I've got them on the bingo card right now. So when you say kind of like Galveston with God, that horrible storm, It isn't really any surprise that there's not so much haunted history, whether you believe it or not that it's haunted. This whole city is just one giant graveyard. And it literally, anytime downtown in the historic district, when they do utility work or renovations or repairs to buildings or anything, they always find something. Cannonballs, human remains, full-blown cannons. It doesn't even make the news because to us, it's just, yeah, that happens all the time. Not
Right.
that big of a deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Bern, what tour do you prefer to do? Are you trained on both the family friendly and the adults only, or is it one or the other?
I'm trained on all four of the tours. And my favorite and the one I do most of the time is the haunted cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
That's the tour where I've developed some friends there in the cemetery. And I think it was 2023, I did 233 cemetery tours. So when you're out there that much, they get to know you and you know them. I know I'm not supposed to have favorites out there, but I do. There's a part where we use the SLS camera and we consistently, same folks come up and other guys will say, yeah, sometimes, but I have a couple who consistently will come up because I'm there a lot. They've got something to say. I mean, they just want to be remembered.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line on a lot of those folks, they just want not to be forgotten.
Yeah. Do you ever go home and feel like you accidentally brought your work home with you?
No, I have a little ritual before I get in my car. I say, I'm going home. This is your home. You stay here. And so far it's worked pretty well. I mean, I metaphorically bring it home. I'll say to my husband, oh, Mr. Willis's birthday is next week. I got to get him something. And he's just rolls his eyes because Mr. Willis has been dead for 100 years.
My wife's the same way. And Bern, you're not the only one that has, I don't necessarily have a ritual, but I do wear a couple of bracelets on each tour, and each one is to signify something else. There's one for the evil eye, to keep evil spirits away from me. I have a chakra bracelet that I say keeps my chakras cleansed and my energy centers happy. So I don't necessarily have a ritual, but I do this kind of the same thing where I have certain things that I always make sure that I bring on the tour just on the off chance, like you said, I don't necessarily want to bring anything back with me.
Yeah, we have this office ghost. He hasn't been around in a while. He got nicknamed Ernie from someone using type to text or speak to text one day. And we've always kind of heard weird things around the office, and you hear like a door close and no one's there. One time I felt a tap on my shoulder and I whipped around and there's nobody there, stuff like that. And so probably like 2 months ago, I was getting ready to go out for a run one morning at home and I heard humming. And I thought it was my husband messing with the dog. And so I go out and I look because I was going to yell at them because everyone's sleeping. And the dog is sitting there kind of growling, and my husband is sound asleep. And I was like, okay, that's weird. All right. And so kind of forgot about it, came to work, started telling the story to someone, and they're like, yeah, did the humming sound like this? And I'm like, that was it. Like he came home with me. I don't know what he wanted. But we haven't seen him since. So I think he got lost on his way back to the office because all the boxes have been staying stacked up and doors have been staying closed. So it's one of those things that you don't always want to bring your work home with you.
I'm a little jealous too of Bern because I've been doing ghost tours for, I don't know, 5.5, 6 years, something like that. I have never seen anything, not once. Have had people on my tours, claim that they see things. And of course, we do get photographs,
Mhm.
on a fairly regular basis. But I can't say that I personally have ever seen anything. And so my hope is that one night where it's my absolute last ghost tour that I ever do, that they all pop up all at once. And yay! Thank you for bringing people by to talk about us. Thank you for bringing people by to think about us. Because I'm like Bern. I think even though I've never seen anything, I do like the idea that they receive some level of comfort knowing that they're not completely forgotten. And depending on the ghost, they may actually enjoy the notoriety. that comes with it.
Especially the kids. I don't know if you have a lot of kid ghosts in Charleston, but they tend to be, well, for one thing, they're pranksters. They all will just mess with you. The ones in Galveston, and they're not malevolent, but they just want to. There's one on our downtown tour where if you put a drink, he hates Diet Coke. So if there's a Diet Coke on the bar, he'll slide it down the bar, and he shows up on, I don't know if you use ghost meters on your tour, but he will show up pretty consistently on the ghost meter, but never where I say he's going to be. If I say Jimmy's at this
Well, of
corner,
course not.
around the corner. And if I go around the corner looking for him first and say, well, I think Jimmy's over here. No, he'll be back where in the other spot.
You got to sneak up on him unannounced. Don't say anything next time. Just pounce on him like you're a jungle cat. Just ignore him completely and then go out there with it and then start monitoring and see where he hops up.
I think he knows more about my whereabouts than I do.
He's got, well, kids seem to know. I always say kid ghosts are super creepy, and kids in general are weird when they pick up on that stuff. They're like, Mom, who's that man over there? And you're like, what man? And they like see someone. There's just an element, I think, of creepiness for kids for me with I mean, I know the ghosts sometimes they're trying just to get your attention, but I don't always I don't think I see them the way my kids see stuff like that. Kids are like, they want that element of surprise. They want to, just judging from my own kids, they want to try to sneak up on you and to scare you, or to just surprise you with their presence somewhere. And that's always, I think, just that game and playfulness of kids that apparently does not transcend, or it does transcend both living and past.
Well, we have a notorious Confederate traitor who was executed in the cemetery, like at his gravesite, and where they shoot him and he falls into the open hole. And he's known for being very loud. He died cursing, and he still from time to time comes up and curses. And we have a kid ghost who was buried not far from there, and that kid will come over and taunt him. You'll see a little flash out of the corner of your eye, and it's that kid going over to taunt Nicaragua Smith and make him come up and curse because the kid finds it funny, apparently.
Now I'm super jealous because most of the Charleston ghosts they're sad, or they're melancholy, or they died under absolutely horrible circumstances. And so ours, there's a different atmosphere, when you get around some of our places. Like, I would love to have a mischievous, silly little ghost somewhere, or even just a little bit of a lighter hearted ghost story. But I don't know, the history and everything that's happened in this city, like, so most of ours are they're awful stories.
One in the cemetery is there's a grave site where a woman who apparently had postpartum depression poisoned 4 of her children, her 4 surviving children. And that is a horrendous, heavy story. But those kids are out a lot. And well, of course they're out because, they can't rest in peace.
Yeah.
It's believed to be the only grave in the country where a convicted murderer and all their victims are buried in the same spot. And that makes the kids super restless.
Who could be happy in that? Who's happy in that situation? It's no wonder the place is haunted.
Yeah, and so they come up a lot. People will feel them tapping them, like hip level tapping them, or that's a spot where they often are followed. The kids try to cling and go home with you. But fortunately, I have my friend in the other section of the cemetery, Mr. Willis, who luckiest man ever, and so he is very good at sharing that good luck and helping to release those bonds.
Bern, I'm not sure if, and I guess Lance, this would be the same question for you. In New Orleans, we have the graves that are above ground because we are under sea level. Is that the same in Charleston and in Galveston too?
It's not quite as elaborate as it is in New Orleans. We are slightly above sea level. Our highest point is about 11 feet above sea level. Rocking and rolling.
You are safe.
But still, you get enough people to spill their drinks in the same place at the same time, the whole damn downtown floods for 15 minutes, right? So you do still see the elevated tombs, and you do still see some elevated grave sites, but it's nowhere near as elaborate as it is in New Orleans. And we still like, oh gosh, it was just last year. I'm trying to think of the name of the hurricane that rolled through, and it eludes me. But we still do occasionally still have the grave sites that pop up, or the coffins that make their way to the surface when it floods. It doesn't happen that often. It's been maybe one or two in the last, don't quote me, but the last 8 or 10 years. But it still happens fairly often enough. It's like, wow, this is still going on, even then. So we have our elaborate cemeteries, absolutely, but it's nothing like the ones in New Orleans.
Yeah. Bern, what are the cemeteries like in Galveston?
We actually have enough soil. We're right at sea level. I mean, we are literally a sandbar, but we don't have the mausoleum culture that New Orleans has. Actually, in our cemetery, people are buried 3 deep, which is another reason it's so haunted.
You're stacking coffins?
Yeah, they were buried. There was a layer of the cemetery, like right at sea level in the 1839. Then when it filled up, they added another layer of soil and started over. And then after the 1900 storm, Galveston vowed they'd never go through that again. So they built the seawall and then raised the whole city. And so that created a third layer of dirt. So we have a handful of mausoleums, but not many.
Okay, wait, I have more questions on this, like the building of the city on top of the city. So is there a city below all of this, like an initial city with ground floors then that were filled in?
No, it's not like Seattle, where they did that, where they just left things where they were, because so much of the city was wiped out by the storm. There weren't that many surviving buildings, and the ones that were, they actually jacked up by hand, like crews of men, jacked them up 6 feet, dredged dirt out of the bay, and filled in under it. So the whole island now sits 6 and in some cases 8 feet taller, and that created that third layer of the cemetery.
Wow. I can't imagine anyone is thrilled. Anyone not living is thrilled to have that much construction there.
It was a huge mess, I'm sure, but
Yeah, that's great. And it's also amazing because it was before modern technology right now and the modern equipment we have, where I see like a road going up by me. They're doing some work on it and it's 3 weeks in and they just now are breaking ground. So for like the last 3 weeks, I'm like, what have you been doing? But then I wonder how long did this kind of project take? And just the logistics behind that is crazy, especially with trying to be respectful of your dead.
I think that was a pretty low priority at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're assuming they're being respectful.
I guess, yeah, good point. That's a bad assumption that they're trying to be respectful.
In our cemetery, there were 8,000 people approximately who died in the hurricane. We have 3 who are buried there. The rest, a lot of them were buried, a lot of them just washed away, were never found. They tried gathering them up and doing a burial at sea. Realized how much you had to weight them down. So about half of them, the next day the tide comes in and they float back in, and they just had to cremate them. So yeah, and so that storm, there are people buried under houses. When they went through the rubble, they just kind of left a lot of people where they were and covered them up. So yeah, they're buried all over town. That's why this is such an eerie place to be, because those spirits are everywhere.
Oh, be interesting to take a metal detector through there. Do people find things? Like if you would just start burying people, basically, like there's got to be things that are coming up.
Oh,
Yep.
well, that's what I was talking about here. It's a constant thing. Folly Beach is about 30 minutes down the road, and it has a fairly good chunk of Civil War history on its own right. And Hurricane, I believe it was Matthew that rolled through about 2 years ago, and it just uncovered a clutch of about 24 Civil War cannonballs out at a tourist place in Folly Beach that had been there for the last 140, 150 some odd years, and nobody even knew they were there. One of my favorites is elementary school downtown, Meminger Elementary School. They found black mold in the original Meminger Elementary School building. So the city goes, okay, well, we're going to, we need to destroy the building, put up a new one anyway. So as they're in the middle of the construction of the new Meminger Elementary School, they found not 1, not 2, but 3 unexploded Civil War cannonballs up underneath the original Meminger Elementary School. So, like 6 generations of Charleston Elementary School kids had been going to school on top of unexploded Civil War cannonballs. It's the same. Like I'm listening to Bern. I've never been to Galveston, and now I'm kind of like, this sounds oddly familiar. This fairly regular uncovering of stuff,
Yeah.
things you've never even imagined.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, and it's seems like now it's more than one place. I mean, me maybe just not knowing about the buried cities other than like Seattle or Chattanooga has the same thing where they raise the city up. Just those couple of handfuls where I'm like, wait a minute, like you added 8 feet, and what did you do below with that 8 feet that was already there, and you're stacking it on top, and like who's planning this? And I just have so many questions now that I'm going to have to spend some time on Reddit later this afternoon.
You might not want to.
I will not be getting any other work done today.
The black hole of YouTube and Reddit. Oh man, that's the good
Right,
stuff.
right.
Yeah.
If you could travel to any place in the US or even the world, where would you go just for that haunted experience?
I have not done the Gettysburg tour, and I hear it is fantastic. And I've been to Gettysburg in the daytime, and yes, you can see that because of the horrible things that happened there, that I'm sure that would be one of the most interesting haunted places.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
biggest-
Lance, you could see your ghost there. If you want to go to Gettysburg, you can have your firsthand eyes on a ghost experience in Gettysburg.
My biggest one, I've been to most haunted places I want to go to. My biggest one right now that I really want to go to is the underground area of Seattle,
Mhm.
which I never even knew existed until just a few years ago. And I was so mad because I've been to Seattle a few times, and I did feel a little bit better when I found out, oh yeah, they just started doing tours of it within the last couple of years. So it's a recent thing. But that's not, I don't know how haunted that is, but as far as like just really odd, weird places in America, that's one I really want to go to. Is at the top of my list is that underground area of Seattle. It's just so bizarre and surreal looking and sounding that this would even exist in
Mhm.
the middle of a modern day metropolis. So I'm dying to go through there. And strictly haunted, I have to go to St. Augustine. I've been all over the place, never been to St. Augustine, and it kind of pisses me off that I've never been there. So I need to get myself in gear and go.
Yeah, it feels like that could be a weekend trip for you.
Hey, I know. See, don't shame me any more than I already shamed myself for not going to St. Augustine. It's like
Because
5
now
hours
I'm
on the road.
reconsidering. We're going to Houston in a few weeks, returning from a trip, and now I'm thinking instead of Houston, maybe we need to hit up Galveston.
You're that close.
Yeah, I mean, we were going to do NASA, which is like a whole nother can of worms. Because when I go there, my kids are fascinated by that stuff. And I was like, this looks like a Hollywood set. And my husband just hits me because he's like, don't ruin everybody's time here.
You got busted.
So it's kind of like, well, I think I'd rather maybe hit up Galveston now. I mean, honestly, I really just thought it was a spring break destination. So this is fascinating. Like a whole world has opened
Well, this
more.
brings up okay, now I'm going to throw out a question for you, even though you're supposed to be the one guiding it. What do your kids think about the haunted stuff? Are they into it, or are they just kind of like, yeah, it's mom's weird thing that she likes to do?
So I will preface it by saying my husband always tells me that I believe way too much and I'm gullible, but I always tell him that a lot of what I am into is just spoiler alerts and it's nothing more than that. But my oldest daughter is just kind of like, okay, whatever, mom. But my older son is more into the cryptid creatures and things like that. And we have checked out every possible book series from the library. Anytime a new series comes in, we have to get it. And then we go down these weird rabbit holes together of cryptid creatures and he'll tell me that we need to go to the cemetery on October 24th because that's when the ghost comes out. And do I know about this ghost? And I'm like, yes, I've heard of him before, like things like that. And my other ones are just kind of like, okay, Mom, are you home from work yet? So kind of that like spectrum, I guess. We did a ghost tour last summer in Nashville, and they were into it, but not like they had a lot of questions after that we had to look up. It was the same experience we had when we went to like Arlington National Cemetery, or we did like the White House, things like that, where there's known hauntings of things. They want to know more after, not so much while we're there. Good question though. Do you ever use, Lance, do you ever use any EMF readers or anything like that on tour? Or
Not really. Not really with I don't know if it's really a personal preference or what. My push with my ghost tours is I actually like the truth behind the hauntings. And so we get into, okay, yes, is it haunted or not? Maybe, maybe not. I tell people on my tours, I'm like, that's entirely up to you. You know, whatever your personal beliefs tell you is fine with me. I'm not here to try to make you a skeptic or a believer. But when you do dig into the history of things, and one of my favorites is there's a church downtown that we go to, and the ghost of the church was a young bride that was murdered on the day of her wedding. And it's a horrible enough story, but I found a picture of her. Her mother had this gorgeous death portrait of her painted after she died. So we'll go through this story of this poor murdered bride. And then I'll tell people, I'm like, oh, by the way, here's this death portrait that her mother had made of her after she died. And you can see the change on people's faces, whether they believe it or not. All of a sudden, they're looking at this picture and it's like, okay, maybe the place is haunted, maybe it's not. But this is the actual woman that did die there. This is the 17-year-old girl murdered right before her wedding. And now with a picture, that means she has a face and she has a mother who's going to miss her, and she had a family. And you see, it's my favorite stop on the tour because of that reaction. But you see people will stop and they'll look at that church again, and you can tell they're looking at it in a completely different way than they were when we were just talking about whether it being just a ghost. Because now, haunted or not, we've attached a real person to it. We've put a face behind that name. So my push in most of my tours isn't necessarily the EMFs and the photography aspect of it. It's the aspect of it that what happened here that could have started this in the first place. We do take pictures on our tours. We do play around sometime with some special lenses that I have for my camera setups, and we occasionally catch some really crazy things. Doesn't happen often, but at the same time, I think when you push it a little bit more to the historical, to the realistic part, that really just punches that emotional connection into them even harder, and it makes that much more of an impact, I think. So I jokingly tell folks that my ghost tours are 75% historical. You know, maybe elaborate, maybe exaggerate just a little bit, but the core of it is true. These were real people. And more than anything, that's my thrust in my ghost tours, is to try to humanize these faceless entities that we may or may not ever encounter while we're out wandering around.
Mhm. Bern, you mentioned that you use a special lens on the cemetery tours. Is that the only piece of equipment that you use?
There's about 15 minutes of the cemetery tour where we use an app called GhostTube. And there's two versions of it. One is an SLS reader and the other is an audio thing. And we use it in just the one section where there's a mass grave from yellow fever victims. It's on the second layer, so there's no tombstones or what have you. It's been all covered up. But those folks, they're the most restless of all because, yellow fever, was a horrible way to die. And a lot of these people were buried as John Does. They were not. And in 1867, there was a terrible epidemic and about 600 people died in 2.5 weeks. And that just overwhelmed the cemetery system. They literally couldn't dig graves fast enough, couldn't build coffins fast enough. So they just did a big mass grave. And that makes for really restless folks, because there were people they don't know. They're not with their families. They can't rest in peace. And so they do come up, and we will see those stick figures every single night. There'll be somebody, a number of them up. And I like to use that, and not everybody wants to download it, but it's, you know, it's a free app. But when you see those figures, then you know where that energy is. And if you want to, you can go closer to it. And a lot of times you'll find that cold spot. And so people do feel that that's a cool thing. But other than that, I don't. Because it's as Lance said, it's the stories, telling those stories in a way that they can relate to and that move them. That's really what they're going to get out of it more than anything.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a great way too to handle the skeptics of guests that don't believe in ghosts, and maybe you're not trying to win them over with the actual presence of ghosts, but the more of the belief that there's some really terrible things that happen here, and there's a reason that this could be haunted, and there's some restless souls. I think that's definitely a better way to kind of win those skeptical guests over.
The crazy thing is, and Bern made me think about it, and it's hilarious to me that, and especially Bern, the way you so casually said it, oh, there's an app for that. Like so much of, we all have our toe in, this kind of supernatural realm. But it now it's so mainstream at this point. Like Bern said, oh yeah, there's an app for it. You just go download this thing. 10 or so years ago, people would have laughed it off, but now it's become one of these mainstream things that and Bern, I want to know, you in Galveston, I don't really run into too many like hardcore skeptical people. It's like the vast majority of people on my tours are believers to some extent, or they're like me. They're what I call hopeful skeptics. They want to believe. They really do want to see something. They really do want to encounter something that kind of shakes them up a little bit and makes them go, oh my God, what if that really was a ghost? I don't know that I've encountered more than a handful of just like hardcore skeptics.
Often in a group, there'll be one skeptic and their spouse dragged them along, and you can't do anything about that. You just do your tour. But yeah, and it helps, I think, me, because I started out as a skeptic. I mean, when I started, I had never actually had a ghost encounter. Was not really that convinced there were a lot of them out there. But I thought, man, if you guys are going to pay me to talk about the Battle of Galveston every night, sweet. And then the more you're out in that cemetery, the weirder things happen. And before you know it, you're celebrating Mr. Willis's birthday,
I was mad because one of our ghosts that I like to talk about, her execution date is today. And I'm mad because I'm actually off tonight. And I'm like, oh God, I should have been working,
Yeah.
tonight so I can talk about her. But you do occasionally, I mean, Bern's right. You do occasionally run into the skeptic that's been dragged, usually by a spouse. I'm glad to see that's a universal thing too. But also too, if you kind of push it like Bern said the same thing, if you kind of push it to where let's humanize, or let's try to make that emotional connection versus, ooh, ghosts everywhere, you can usually turn them around. I mean, I've got some of the best feedback from folks that were like, I don't believe any of this ghost stuff, but I learned so much, or I enjoyed this tour so much. And that's a nice little feather to tuck in your cap.
Yeah. It's funny on our side of things when we get to read all the reviews, and you do see the occasional one that says, thanks for making it such a fun night for my wife. She had a great time.
Okay. At the risk of being very misogynistic, and maybe it's just the tone of a lot of our tours here in Charleston.
Men and women, same husband, wives, they all say the same things.
Yeah.
A lot of our groups are very female heavy. We get a lot of bachelorette parties. We get a lot of girls' weekends. I've had entire tours where my whole group, 20 some odd people, have all been women. So I'm not, so you do get that reluctant spouse. And sometimes I take that as a personal challenge that, okay, I've got to sway this reluctant spouse over to my side. Whether you make them a believer or not, doesn't really matter. But I want them to walk away with going, man, this was a great thing. And this, I learned at least one thing out of it.
Yeah, I think we've been talking about that a lot within our office. Is there's definitely this vibe that's starting to come up more. Maybe it's just like a daily aesthetic, the everyday Halloween kind of thing, where people want every day to be like a Tim Burton movie, and they're not quite sure how to make that mainstream and normal. And we're like, come here, we have something to tell you. And
Yeah,
like,
yeah, come talk to us. I mean,
uh,
please, you see, I've got my little
right,
skeleton shirt on,
right.
like right now,
Like, I
just for
mean,
the
I'll
podcast.
wear, right. I mean, I'll wear t-shirts with little ghosts on them year round. And people look at me and they're like, did you know your t-shirt has a ghost on it? And like, yes, I work at a ghost tour company and this is a normal thing to wear. And they look at me and they are shocked that I am involved in this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And then I start talking about it and they're like, oh my gosh, I have so many more questions for you. And can I come on tour? And I'm like, yeah, come on. Like, where do you want to go? And it's just become more of a mainstream fun thing to do. And we do see a lot of those bookings with bachelorette parties, and not so much the bachelor parties, and they're not as into it, I guess. I don't know. I guess the guys just don't need that good scare, but women just really seem to want, like, they like those, like the thriller books or the paranormal kind of stuff like that, or maybe it plays into the fantasy books too. It definitely is a whole thing that people are more and more into it, and it's becoming more normal and mainstream. And it's fun. Like, I mean, it's just kind of like, hey, come on, we have to tell you something. Like, come in closer and join us. Where it's a fun thing.
We have a lot of bachelorette parties specifically on the red light tour. Not as much in the cemetery, but the red light district tour gets bachelorette parties even more than the pub crawl.
Yeah, those pub crawls I think are underrated, and some of ours in the Northeast pop up pretty heavily right around Halloween, where they kind of fly under the radar for most of the year, and then all of a sudden October 1st hits and every pub crawl is booked. And we're like, where did you guys come from? And why this month is it so busy all of a sudden? But come on, like, join us, have a drink. I know you both really deal a lot with weather, and probably crazy weather and extremely hot weather. Do you feel like things get more active in the thick of summer? Or do you feel like the cooler, less humid air in the winter kind of seems to bring out the spirits more?
Ours, I think there's a little more to it during the summer months.
Mhm.
And I'm not just talking about heat and humidity. I mean, we have people passing out on our tours on a regular basis during the summer. But at the same time, there's a different feeling to it. There's an almost an oppressiveness in the air, but there's a certain type of, I hate to say electricity, but there's a certain feeling in it too. And I wonder sometimes if it's because historically a lot of these people that would be when they were active during the heat of the summer. Charleston, 100 degrees, 88% humidity. The air is so thick you can chew on it. For a lot of these people to stay indoors and only come out at night to conduct their business or see each other or do their socializing when it's a bit cooler, that was a fairly standard thing. And we do tend to get more photographs. We do tend to get more people claiming that they've seen something or they've experienced something. We do tend to get those a lot more during the summer months. And I don't know if they're going back to that habit of, okay, let's stay indoors during the daytime and be sociable at night, or what it is. But yeah, like around here, we jokingly talk about the winter months being dead months, and it is. We don't get anywhere near the type of reaction from our groups and the type of things that they, claim that they encounter or experience as we do during the summer months.
There's a little bit more activity, I think, in the summer. And I think it's because for a lot of those folks who are long gone now, those summer months were absolute fear. You were afraid of a hurricane, you were afraid of yellow fever. So that added that palpable air of fear, I think, in the summer that they lived with their whole lives. Summer is scary. And so I think that makes them a little more restless. I do have one ghost that only comes out in the summer. He's a Norwegian immigrant. You know, Galveston was the second largest immigration port behind Ellis Island. So we had lots of immigrants come through here. And can you imagine coming from Norway, where it's like, what, 50 degrees on a summer day? And you get to Galveston in July. He got here in July, wearing a wool coat. And he must have thought he went to hell. And so he comes out and went. I've never felt him in the winter because I think he's like, oh, finally we can settle in. But when it gets to be like 90 degrees, when you walk by his grave, it is just super humid, super damp, that one spot.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's something in the soil there or what, but there is a definite feeling. You can imagine well, both of y'all, how humid it must be in that one spot to be extra humid. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Yeah, which we get sometimes those weird where it's just kind of foggy, like a circular fog kind of low to the ground. And we always joke, we're like, Moses, is that you? We're like, is the bush on fire? Because you'll get like a spot. It's just random spots that are hot and there's nothing going on there. Like we're in our neighborhood. There's nothing there. And
The-
it's just a hot spot.
Yeah,
the
no.
heat, the summer heat makes the cold spots like even more dramatic too.
Right.
You know, when you're walking around, and all of a sudden you'll see like 100. We'll be out 10 o'clock at night, 103-degree heat index, and we'll go to a certain area that I know of, and all of a sudden you see one or two people in the group like, "Whoa, what in the world?" Like, yeah. So
Yeah.
again, maybe that's just us, but summer just seems to have an extra little kick to it that I don't see during the other seasons.
I think part of it is that the air is so thick that all of the sounds are kind of trapped. And so you're picking up so much more of what's around you. And you can't hear like far out. Like I always think of that, like I can hear every squirrel in a tree. But you can't hear that when it's cold out because the air is thinner. So I think you're kind of trapped in this humid cloud of the South where everyone is living in the same fog and humidity and everyone's just chewing the same air at that point.
Yeah. Oh.
After a while, I know tours night after night and week after week kind of become a Pangea of tours and people and all of that. Is there any one guest or experience or night that really stands out in your mind?
Okay. First off, for those of you listening, this is the second time in our conversation that she's used the word Pangea. I don't think we were recording the first time. And I even made a joke about it. I'm like, okay, that's a word that I don't hear often enough. So I want all of us to do a little bit better putting Pangea into our vocabularies. It's perfect. One of my most vivid memories I legitimately thought somebody on my tour I thought somebody on the tour was going to become part of the tour. I had a gentleman have a heart attack on the tour.
On tour?
It was one of the most nerve-wracking experiences I've ever had. We were walking around in the summer, and I noticed at one stop that he started looking a little bit rough, and he started sweating, and this is not unusual. It's again, we're 100 degrees. People pass out all the time. So I kind of guide us over to another place where there's a bench, and hey, anybody wants to take a seat on the bench? Go right ahead. So he sits down on the bench. And I'm watching him as he's sitting there, and he starts rubbing his left chest and his left arm a little bit. So now he's looking really gray. Not just most people when they get the overheated, they turn beet red or they go really pasty pale. He's turning this odd shade of gray that I don't like. So I kind of excused myself from the rest of, hey, I'll be back in a minute. I go over, I said, sir, are you okay? And this guy looks at me and he says a series of words in a grouping that I never thought I would hear. He goes, I'm fine. I'm just having a little bit of a heart attack. I start calling 911. His family comes running over from the group. He's here with like his wife and a couple kids.
Yeah.
They come running over. I tell you, it's like he's having a heart attack. And the family's like, oh, he's fine. He'll be fine. He does this all the time. It's okay. He'll be fine. Don't worry about it. I'm still calling 911, right? And he's sitting on the bench, rubbing it, looking pasty, sweating, all this other stuff. He's like, no, it's fine. I'm going to be fine. I want to finish the tour. I want to finish the tour. I was like, dude, I swear to God, I will take you on a private tour. I absolutely will. But I need you in the emergency room right now, more than anything else. And his family is fighting me tooth and nail from calling 911. I don't know the family dynamics. I don't know if he had a large inheritance somewhere that
Yeah.
they were waiting on him to kick the bucket. I don't even, my father's a retired physician, and he said, well, maybe he had arrhythmia, maybe he's calling a heart attack something like irregular heartbeat or whatever.
Right.
I never thought about that. But I still think of that guy, and I'm still horrified by that. Far and away, one of the worst experiences I've had on a tour was
It makes a
sitting
good
and
story, though.
waiting for this ambulance to come and not knowing if this guy is legitimately going to keel over at any moment or if maybe I'm the one over exaggerating. But at that point, you know what? I need you. That's way beyond my pay grade, my level of responsibility. So I need you to get checked out anyway.
That does make a memorable tour. And do you now carry an AED machine with you?
No, not at all. No. If my personality is not electrifying and magnetic enough to work, then no, you're a lost cause. But no, that one, oh, that's been the most nerve wracking. Most of it though, is it's more. I like the responses from people, but then I also like, and Bern, please tell me if you get a kick out of this too, because it sounds egotistical when I say it. I like it when I encounter the same people again. Like I love it when somebody's like, we were on one of your tours 2 or 3 years ago or last year. We had so much fun. We wanted to come and do this one. And we were hoping that you would be there, or something like that. And I love that. Like I love anytime that happens. But yeah, Heart Attack Man's my most memorable tour, far and away. Bern, I'm ready to hear.
Well, like Lance said, it's always just a big ego stroke when I introduce myself and somebody's like, oh yeah, I was reading the TripAdvisor reviews and I was hoping we'd get you. And I'm, well, I was hoping I'd get you tonight. So
Yeah.
there've been a number of fairly memorable nights, and fun ones. But one of my favorites, I'll just tell it because it's my favorite, is I was talking about Mr. Willis, luckiest man ever. And one night in that section where we always see stuff with the SLS camera, there was a hurricane this summer. And for a couple nights after that, it was nothing. I mean, we'd get there, and we'd have the app on and nothing's coming up because just the disturbance in the atmosphere. And so I've got flop sweat because I always want my guests to have a good time. And so I'm like, oh my. And so we get over to Mr. Willis's grave there, and I'm starting to talk. And he's usually resting in peace because he and his wife were there and they had a nice life. But that night, because nobody else has come up and I'm stressing about it, he pops up, does the cold spot, the whole thing, because he's my buddy and he's helping me out. And that was just, to me, like, if I had been a skeptic forever, that was enough to turn the tide.
Yeah. That's it's your old standby. That's when you know you have a bestie. Is there any story that you wish you could tell on tour or one that you wish you could spend more time on?
I can't say that there is. Ghost City's been awesome because years ago when we first pitched the idea of doing an R-rated tour,
Mm-hmm.
and it was mostly so that it's mostly so that I can just cuss and be a potty mouth on a tour, but it was also because there's so much of this city that you can't really get away with talking about on your standard family-friendly tour. Murder, prostitution, and some of that's the most fascinating things. And you can see people when like we do a brief little touch on prostitution during one of our tours, and you'd be amazed at how like really into, not in a perverse way or anything, but just this fascination that, wow, people 200 years ago were just as perverted as we are in the 21st century. So when we pitched to Ghost City, the idea of doing like R-rated tours, they didn't really like it a whole lot. The original Charleston manager was not fond of it, but they gave us 6 weeks. We'll give you 6. We'll see how it goes. That tour is a sellout, like constantly. Thankfully, because Ghost City allows us in Charleston to do that, to have at least the freedom to do a couple of specifically R-rated tours,
Mhm.
there's not a whole lot that we can't talk about. I do sometimes, well, even Ghost City granted me that one. I do sometimes wish we could do a little more about the Prohibition era. And Ghost City was like, well, yeah, here, do a Prohibition tour and let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
So I can't complain about that. No, I have the freedom in one tour or another to talk about pretty much whatever I want to talk about.
Bern, how about you? Are there any stories you wish you could tell, or ones that you wish you could just like only do that story the whole time?
I love the variety of stories. One thing that I'm wishing I could tell, but I don't know the story yet. Galveston had a bubonic plague outbreak in the 1920s, and a number of people died. And since it was in the 20s, I assume some of those people we walk by their houses probably, and some of them are probably in the cemetery. And that's my goal this year, is to do some bubonic plague research, figure out a little more about how where those folks are, and maybe incorporate a little, because it's bizarre that there would be this medieval disease here. It came on a ship, came from China, supposedly, because like we always blame our diseases on. And yeah, I think it would be a neat story to tell, but needs a lot of research at this point.
Yeah, that's one thing that I really enjoy about, I think, working for Ghost City Tours is if you get an idea and you pitch it well, and they're like, "Yep, okay, go try it out, see how you do. Let us know." And that's kind of been with some of the new tours we've released, and we either put a lot of faith in the guides to help us with the writing of the tours and getting them off the ground, or we're doing the research on them, and it's kind of like, yeah, that sounds like a cool idea, let us know how that works out for you. And this is kind of like we get to go and try it out, and if it fails, we're like, okay, we're going to take this one off and try something else. And there's really there haven't been many things that we've wanted to do lately that we haven't had the go ahead to do. And we're lucky enough that we have the guides behind us to help make it happen. And that's really what makes it fun.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add, you're talking about stories we could tell. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily stories we could tell. And I don't understand why Charleston does this, so please don't talk. We are in Charleston, we're restricted to where we can and cannot go after a certain point in time. Certain neighborhoods we can't go into. And I was thinking about that, and I'm like, really, that'd be the only thing I would really change. Because there is some really good stuff in these areas, and we just can't access them. And that's not really anybody's fault. I get it. If I'm living in this neighborhood, I wouldn't want some dude standing out of my house at 10 o'clock at night going, this house is haunted.
Mhm.
So I totally get why the city does that. But that would really, when you brought it up like that, that's really the only thing I would change. Is I would like to have the freedom to go
Yeah.
where we wanted to go, but I also respect the city's decision for the residents to kind of keep the tours out after a certain point.
Yeah, we have the issue in Salem too, where there's restrictions on where we can go, what time we can go at, how late we can go, things like that. And I think that's an area that guests do not understand. They think that because it's a public sidewalk, you should be able to go there. And we're like, yeah, well,
Yeah, and I ain't met a quiet tour guide yet. It's not in our nature. Just that's you don't need somebody standing outside your front door, even though it's public property,
right.
yelling about how the horrid things that happened in your house.
Right. Yeah. There was this whore that lived in this house. And you just kind of start like spilling the beans on the house, and then the neighbors really start talking.
The real estate agents getting sued because they didn't disclose any of this to you when you bought the house. So
Yes.
yeah, it opens up a can of worms.
It sure does. It sure does. So just to kind of close things off, what is really one thing you wish that guests knew before they came on tour?
Can I be completely 100% blunt?
Yeah, this is the safe space, Lance.
Okay. Don't bring your children on a tour, especially one that is sold and advertised and marketed as being 16 and up. Stop trying to sneak little kids on adult tours. Shameful. You should be ashamed. Dogs are always welcome
Mhm.
on my tours. Dogs, you can always bring your dog. We love dogs. And then from the ghost tour aspect of it, if there really is something happening or is going to happen, the dog's going to know it way. But I love having dogs on my tour. We
Yeah.
should have done this as a question. Why don't we think about this, Bern? I love having dogs on a tour. I watch a dog intently anytime someone brings a dog on a tour, because I'm just waiting to see if they have any type of reaction anywhere we go.
Yeah.
Bern, what do you wish that guests knew before they came on tour with you?
The only thing I would change about my guests is that make sure that they know where it's like a whale watch. You may see a whale and you may not. I always tell them, I work for Ghost City Tours. I am here promptly at 9 o'clock. They don't work for Ghost City Tours, and they show up when they feel like it. We don't guarantee a ghost. They will have a good time. I do guarantee they will have a good time.
Yes.
Right. This is not the Haunted Mansion at Disney
Yeah.
World.
Bern, I have a t-shirt and you can get them off of Amazon for fairly cheap. I wear it a lot during the summer, but I have a t-shirt that says pretend I'm a ghost. And so I wear that on a lot of my tours. And I'm like, okay, this is all I'm going to guarantee as far as us seeing ghosts is right here.
Yeah, we have a guide in another city that will keep a little ghost like stuffy in his pocket. And then at the end, when people say, well, where are the ghosts? He'll pull it out. He's like, oh, it's right here. And he's like, now you saw a ghost.
I love that.
It kind of, I think, is a little reality check for people that we can't just make these things appear like we're on the Haunted Mansion ride at Disney World. So
I always take it as a sign of enthusiasm, though. It doesn't upset me that, can we go see ghosts? We're going to do that. No, I'm just happy that you're into it.
mhm.
But yes, expectation management.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you both so much for joining me today. It was really fun to get the two different perspectives from our different cities. And there's really a lot of similarity. I think more than I initially thought there would be between Charleston and Galveston. And I think that's just a really unique way that, this is kind of like the same job on copy and repeat, but yet it's very, very different every time you paste it. So it's fun to hear your stories and your perspectives and your experiences. And it's just a fun time. So thank you both for joining me today.
Thanks a lot. It was great to meet you, Lance.
Oh, it was a pleasure. And thank you. It's been a blast. We need to do this again more often.
We can arrange that. All right. Well, this is all for today's episode of Hometown Hauntings. Make sure you follow us across all of our social media pages, and we will see you on tour.
Hometown Hauntings is brought to you by Ghost City Tours, the largest ghost tour company in the nation. With tours in over 20 cities, including New Orleans, Savannah, Charleston, and beyond, we bring haunted history to life with spine-tingling tales and expert storytelling. Ready to experience the paranormal up close? Book now at ghostcitytours.com to explore a haunted city near you.